Now it's time for Spot on Sports. Here's your host, Mike Trezza.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Spot on Sports, New York's newest and before long, New York's best sports podcast. My name is Mike Trezza. I'm your host. Right now, let me introduce my co-host, Mike Guidone.
Great to be with you, Trez. We've talked about this for a while, and the day has come.
Yeah, the day is here. And you know what, Mike? There's been so many big sports stories in New York come out in the last week or two. And every time you and I have started to discuss off the air what we're going to talk about on the air, another huge sports story comes out. In the last couple weeks, we've had the Carrasco and Lindor trade for the Mets. We've had DJ LeMahieu re-signed by the Yankees. We have a new Jet coach. We have the big trade for the Brooklyn Nets we're going to dive into a little bit later on.
Can't wait.
Yeah, but right now, Mike, we've got to get into the news of the day, and that, of course, is the Jared Porter story.
A story that we did not anticipate for sure 24 hours ago. This was not our lead, but unfortunately, got to address it, especially as a Met fan. And as one of those long-suffering people, all I can say is, can't we just have 30 days? 30 days without something to drag us back down.
Yeah, and for those of you not familiar with the story, Jared Porter, 41-year-old executive, was hired by the Mets just on December 13th, so he's only been on the job 5 weeks, to be their general manager. And late last night, the news came out that when he was with the Cubs back in 2016, 2017, he sent over 60 texts to this young woman, harassing her. I guess at first he was sort of trying to get her interested in him. And then at some point, the nature of the text evolved or devolved, I guess you would say, into something really obscene. And the Mets, to their credit, wasted no time. And today, early this morning, they relieved Jared Porter of his duties as GM. So let me ask you, Mike, what was your first reaction when you first came across this story?
Well, early this morning when it first broke, the question was, how quickly would the Mets act? Would they take a little time, investigate, go through that whole process? And as you mentioned before, right away, boom, take care of it, which at least now the new regime that's in place, you can say they're acting. It really isn't in some ways the same old Mets. New day has dawned. So as a Met fan and from speaking to some of my cohorts today, we feel good about that. And I think there is something to be said for acting quickly. Yeah,
you bring up an important aspect of this story, Mike, is that the fact that when the Mets owned the team, it seemed like when these types of stories, obviously not one just like this, but when these types of things happened, they let it fester for a couple days. They might have let Jared Porter hang around for a couple days or even a couple weeks and twist in the wind before they actually reacted to the story.
Absolutely. You think back last year with Carlos Beltran, when everything came out with him, it wasn't the longest time that they dealt with it, but again, had him twist around for a little bit. It was plenty of fodder for sports radio, national news. Again, this is not a great story that we're dealing with as the New York Mets brass. But then you say, you know what? The quicker we deal with it and move on, the better. I guess this group is a little bit more experienced or a little more savvy with dealing with this kind of thing. And it does. It gives you a good feeling. At least you know what? Okay, something's going to happen. Not what we wanted to, but we're going to deal with it immediately and have a little bit of, light at the end of the tunnel for something like this.
And as you and I talked about earlier, how can a guy, Mike, who's bright enough to become the general manager of a baseball team at 40 years of age, right? I mean, there are 30 of these jobs in the whole country. And how many millions of men would love this job? And maybe some women, too, for that matter, would love this job. And the guy's bright enough to become the GM of a baseball team, Major League Baseball team at 40, but yet in his mid-30s, he's stupid enough to be doing something like this. How is that possible?
Trez, I can't answer that. I wish I had something that I could tell you, like, there's some kind of way to look through this and say, okay, maybe he made a mistake once, but this is not the kind of thing that you just all of a sudden in your 30s wake up and say, you know what, I'm really in love with this, I'm going to go here. you're right. You're building your career. This is you're in your 30s. You're working for a team. You work for the Red Sox, I think, 17 years. This is your goal. And to put it out there for this kind of behavior, it absolutely makes no sense. And the fact that it came out at this time, we can get into a whole thing about that. Why now and how the story broke and whatever else.
Exactly.
But when you're talking about in your 30s, 40, working towards this, and you have this kind of thinking to put it on the line, I'm surprised something else hadn't come out before this where he had some type of behavior before. I mean, someone said to me this morning, do they vet these people? They must have, but it was buried pretty deep.
It's an interesting point, and just to piggyback onto what you're saying, I mean, bigger picture, and this bothers me as a Yankee fan to say this. Every organization is looking for that next Theo Epstein. They're looking for that young, maybe even Ivy League, really bright guy that will sit down at his computer 17, 18 hours a day and go through all the sabermetrics and put everything in this, very advanced mathematical equation. And, this is the kind of guy that people are looking for. But you bring up a really interesting aspect of this. What the Met fan wants to know today, Mike, and let me ask you this question. Any negative reflection on Sandy Alderson and bigger picture on Steve Cohen for not having been sort of plugged in enough to see if there was anything troubling in this guy's past. Again, you're handing over the keys to a Lamborghini to your 16-year-old. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Is the analogy we can make.
Well, it's a great analogy. And I listened to a little bit of Sandy's press conference before we came in today, and he was held to the fire a little bit. Not to the point maybe where you think, the honeymoon is still going on, and he's worked for the Mets before. When you have Steve Cohen, though, as this man, as your owner now, Sandy's going to get a little bit of a pass here with this next regime. But a couple of reporters asked him, they said, going forward, free agents, trades, are you going to really now even be a little bit more in the moment with vetting these guys, being that you've been burned once already and so soon? He says, yes, I got to believe him. He is a former Marine. He comes from a great background. But you do have to kind of shake your head and say, where was this before? Could it have been buried so deep? You didn't kind of get that vibe from this guy who's going, like you said, you're giving the keys to a young kid, to your franchise. It makes me a little uptight. It does. And
this is what the Met fan wants to know today. They want to know, they don't really care about what happens to Jared Porter, to be quite honest with you, but they want to know, how does this affect the team I'm going to see on the field wearing the orange NY this summer?
Sure, because he's been dealing with the agent for Springer. He's been involved in all these trades so far, especially when you're talking about free agents and bringing guys in. How your franchise is thought of, perception's reality. The new perception was exciting to be here. You see Stroman tweeting when they made these trades, guys are psyched. And then you have this come up. That's what the Met fan wants to know. Is this going to impact us negatively? Is the thought process now same old Mets again? Or can we at least get a couple of months under our belt here? Let's get into the season. Let's keep the kumbaya thing going with Steve Cohen. And really, okay, this happened. It's not indicative of what's going forward, but we're all a little tense.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on the story as we move forward, but we want to shift gears right now and react to the NFL playoff action. Some really great games, Mike. No, not a blowout in the bunch. All these games were pretty close. A lot of them were kind of interesting. I think we'll sort of start with the last game and work our way back. That was the Sunday night game. Obviously, the 43-year-old quarterback against the 42-year-old quarterback. Brady and his Buccaneers able to get the best of Drew Brees and the Saints in that game, 30-20 final.
No matter how many times you want to root against him, you want to count him out, you're a Tom Brady hater. You're just hoping, you're praying that he's not going to continue this run and just be the ageless wonder that he is. Just when he looks like he's down a little bit beginning of the season, guy hasn't missed a beat. Comes in, goes into New Orleans. Now, granted, it's not like games of old where the Superdome is rocking and whatever else, but these are two great teams going. Saints beat them twice throughout the year.
Exactly.
Brady comes in, boom, starts throwing darts, and before you know it, game's over.
Yeah. And what struck me in that game, Mike, was that, and they even made a reference to it on the broadcast, it seems like Breeze, other than just the concussion that he was going through, it just seemed he couldn't throw the ball downfield anymore. The one big play they actually needed Jameis Winston to come in there and throw that pass downfield.
Yeah, he did not look comfortable. You could see his emotions after the game, because he's obviously more than likely going to be retiring. But just physically, he just looked in pain. Gave it all he had. You got to give him that. If you're going to lose your season, you're going with Drew Brees. You're not going as long as he's healthy enough to step on the field. But yeah, he just did not look like himself. And you against a Tampa Bay Buck defense that's been playing so well throughout the year and giving them a chance on offense where they're hitting on all cylinders right now. Not a shock. Not a shock that the Bucs took the game.
Yeah. The other NFC game was the one Saturday evening. Green Bay 32, Rams 18. Listen, I didn't think the Rams were going to win that game. Nobody thought the Rams were going to win that game, but I'll give them credit. They hung in there. I thought Goff did a nice job in that game. Obviously, very, very tough to go to Green Bay this time of year. And also very obvious that Aaron Rodgers is playing like an MVP right now.
I don't get all the hate on Jared Goff, especially after this game. Although McVay's press conference, Sean McVay, coach, after the game, he has to toe the company line and say everything is up for, analysis once this season's done. And he thought Jared did a decent job. He's been on him a little bit. Again, is he a number one pick? He's done a good enough job, especially with McVay now, to take over and move along. When he was a rookie, different coaching staff, and he's a rookie again. Is he an elite quarterback? I don't know, but again, I got to give him a lot of props for coming in. I mean, for Pete's sake, he broke his thumb and had surgery 10 days before that game, maybe 2 weeks, and came in and had him right there. But I don't know. A lot of things you hear, McVay not sold on him. Where are they going? Whatever else. McVay, the offensive genius coming from. But I agree with you 100%. I thought Goff did a great job. And were they going to win that game? Very, very debatable.
Yeah. And, it's funny because on the NFC side, you had all the graybeards, Rodgers, Breeze, and Brady. And the AFC was all the young guns, on display. Everybody from Patrick Mahomes, at least for a while in that game, to Lamar Jackson, to Josh Allen, to, Baker Mayfield, right? So the game that we didn't think was going to be that interesting actually turned out to be kind of interesting was the Chiefs game. They hurt Mahomes two different times in that game. They hurt him early. They hobbled him a little bit, but then later on, the more serious injury was very, very concerning to see him try to get up and be like wobbly, like a boxer that had just gotten knocked down.
Interesting take on that injury. In concussion protocol, seemed it was a head injury from that point, but as you go along and you see it was diagnosed later on neck injury, pinched neck. So he had kind of his wits about him to get up and try to get off the field, but his body said no. So he goes into concussion protocol. Just looked at something before we came in. We're talking now. Right now we're late in the day. He's looking better. Going through everything concussion protocol, he's passed it. It's just a matter of, is the pinch in the neck going to prohibit him from being, enough to defend himself, to move, to not be in a bad situation. So when we're talking about trying to call that game, wow, when Chad Henne's your starting quarterback, it's a big difference.
Much different scene. Yeah, I've heard over the last couple of days that the line is moving anywhere from somewhere between 6 and 7 points, depending on whether Patrick Mahomes is able to play or whether, as you said, you have Chad Henne. But to be honest with you, Henny really came in and did a nice job in relief in that game. If he doesn't, the momentum in that game, late in the game, is now on the side of the Browns, and they're moving the ball. If he doesn't complete that last pass on that 4th and 1, gutsy call by Eric Bieniemy, by Andy Reid to have him throw that ball. The announcers doing the game didn't think he was going to throw the ball. They thought he was just going to
try to throw him offside.
Exactly, and again, gutsy call, and give Henny the credit. He came in relief. He got the job done, and he stopped that momentum that the Browns had going their way.
I go right back to him playing the last regular season game of the season, Henny, to get some reps, to get in there. Nothing on the line. That's another debate as well. Why do teams rest players? They shouldn't. All sorts of things. Is it a negative? Is it a positive? You know what? If he's coming in off the bench with no action at all coming into that game, probably a little bit of a different story. But yeah, you give him so much credit. As we mentioned, Eric Bieniemy calling the plays that are going to make him successful to close that game out. But the momentum very easily shifts. And if he does not complete that pass 4th down, this is not where it's a matter of we got a long field, they punt. It was a shorter field. Baker Mayfield goes down, scores, game's over. This is under a 1-touchdown game.
Henny, by the way, in that game, 6 for 8, 66 yards. He did have that one interception, that pick in the end zone. But again, we thought he played well. The other quarterback that obviously we didn't anticipate having to be relieved over the weekend was Lamar Jackson. And if you watch that game, Mike, up in Buffalo, listen, this is why you play for home field advantage. Those fans up in Buffalo, where you once went to college in that area, you know what the elements can be like. They referred to it many times during that broadcast. And the thing is that what struck me in that game, right? 3-3 at halftime. Now the second half starts. Buffalo comes out, has a drive that takes up most of the third quarter and punches it in for the touchdown, right? Baltimore comes back, and I felt like Lamar was feeling the pressure to score right there. Absolutely. Because Justin Tucker, the usually uber reliable Justin Tucker, had already missed 2 field goals, right?
Absolutely.
So when you look at that 3rd down play on the goal line where he gets picked off, it turns out to be a pick 6. What you come away with on that play, what I came away with anyway, was that Jackson was feeling the pressure to match the score that that Buffalo had just gotten and tie the score right there.
Great point. And the book on him has been, not performing in the playoffs. He gets his win last week. Played a little bit more free and easy, but as we know, stakes are higher after every single game. So you alluded to it, the pressure of having to score, just pressure in general in that facility. Wind was gusting. I know a little something about that area back in the late 80s when I was going to school up there. Thank you for mentioning that. That was kind of the heyday of the Bills becoming the perennial power in the AFC. And Bills fans, whether they're 6,000 or 60,000, they're going to let you know they're there. And it was a tough game to play. Once he goes down, Lamar, and you're on your 4th stringer,
that game's over.
Rookie. You give the guy credit, but yeah, there's no way you're going to be able to hang with that team under those circumstances.
The kid Huntley did a nice job. He came in 60 passing yards, 32 rushing yards. So, again, he was doing his best to keep them in the game. But that game where Lamar goes down in the end zone, boom, the back of the head hits the end zone turf. Concussion, you kind of knew that they had written an ending to that right there.
Can I just mention, though, how tough these guys are? We talk about concussions. When I was younger, playing sports, whatever else, I had a concussion. Not an uber serious one, but enough. These guys, they get up. They're running into the tunnel. They run, and obviously not their first concussion. Lord knows how many they've had. Just to be able to show that fortitude to get up, run off the field, and say, I'm coming back into this game, or at least not let your teammates feel that game's over at that point. String it out a little bit more. Football players, they are paid every single cent they deserve every penny.
Yeah, no, there's no question about it. These guys are warriors. The big story locally, Mike, in football over the last week or two has been the hiring of Robert Saleh, former 49ers defensive coordinator, now the head man with the New York Jets. Surprised you how quickly the deal got done between the Jets and Saleh?
In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. I thought that they were going to go a little deeper into the candidate pool, whatever else, but I think that speaks to his availability. People were after him. He, a hot name, but there were, again, there's other Bieniemy, other Peterson had just gotten let go, and his name was coming up right with the Jets and his ties.
Sure.
So, I was surprised on one hand that they did do it as quickly as they did, but that I really think that speaks to the fact that he was probably the top guy out there. And you want someone who wants to come to this franchise and bring that energy. And I was so happy they locked him up as quickly as they did.
And as a Giant fan, I don't want to sound smug in saying this, but
okay.
How much of a factor do you think it was the Jets trying to replicate the success that the Giants had hiring Joe Judge? I mean, a guy who was kind of not really high on everybody's board, sort of off everybody's radar screen. And Giant fans now are absolutely infatuated with this guy, and I think rightfully so.
Well, it's all about image and what a coach can bring to you, a certain toughness in this day and age. George Halas back in the 50s, there was a reason why the Chicago Bears were called the Monsters of the Midway. It's gone a little bit more now to kind of the press conference type guy, a little bit of flash on the sidelines. I think of Jim Harbaugh back. He came in, he had the substance behind him, but that wears thin, I really believe. Now, with Joe Judge, he talks the talk, but he walks the walk. All these guys, they have to have a little bit of ego. We all do.
Of course.
But they just ooze a certain style and of strength. Saleh, his first two words after being hired, no shortcuts. That was in his introductory press conference. What are you all about? No shortcuts.
Wow.
And that's what you want.
Yeah, you need a guy that's serious.
Oh.
I mean, I don't want to go back and relive, but the Jets, it was never a good idea to bring Adam Gase in and also to give him the type of power that they gave him. They blew out McCagnon out the door when Gase had just gotten there. The whole thing just seemed like such a mess.
Recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Why? If you were going to write a book on how not to hire a coach and a GM, that's it. That's 101. Why would you do that? Thank goodness they got it right this time.
Yeah, we'll get to the Giants as we get closer to the draft, Mike. But obviously a much more interesting story for this offseason is going to be the Jets. And what do they do with that number 2 pick? Are you picking Justin Fields with that pick?
I'm not.
Wow.
I am not. You know what? I've been going through this and doing a little bit more homework draft-wise than I've ever done. At number 2, I'm going to stick with Sam one more year.
Wow.
They're not picking up his option. He's going to be there for $9 million. I think this new regime can get the most out of him. Mike LaFleur, he's their offensive coordinator now. He's going to run a very similar system to what Sam had his first year, where he was relatively successful, felt comfortable. I'm going there, and you know what? I unless you're going to tell me that Zach Wilson or Justin Fields is the second coming, I'm staying with it. And you know what? I'm going Devontae Freeman. I'm going to go a skill position. I'm going to get I think the guy's
Devontae Smith.
Right, exactly. I'm sorry. I'm going with the next Jerry Rice. I think
exactly.
Come on. I mean, how many touchdowns in the national championship game? 5, right?
And all in the first half.
All in the first half.
Yeah. How could you come away after having watched that game and say, listen, if I'm going to keep Sam for another year, and I'm not saying you're wrong, right. I might go a different way, but if I'm going to keep Sam, I've got to get him a weapon. Right. And that weapon I got to get him Devontae Smith.
I'm not going with an offensive lineman, which, again, you want to build that way, that's fine. But when you have the skill guys at the top of this draft, as good as they are, listen, if they believe in quarterback, fantastic. If not, then you got to go with the receiver, or you're going to trade down, one or the other.
Okay. Yeah. you're right. When you win 2 games, let's be honest, you have need all over the field, and the Jets have need all over the field. But again, if we're going to go with your plan and you're going to keep Sam Darnold here one more year and say, hey, listen, let's see what he can do when he has a little more weapons around him. I'm going to get him the best weapon I can get him. I'm going to get him Smith.
The other thing is Deshaun Watson. He's in the new. Are the Jets going to trade for him? They can offer the best package, whatever else. But you just said it. 2-win team. Am I going to trade 3, maybe 4 first-round draft choices?
I don't know if you can.
Come on. I mean, too much there to get him. I mean, he's a fantastic talent, best passer in the league this year. But once you mortgage your future, there's too many things to fill to bring him in and not have to wait another 4 or 5 years. And by then, is he going to want to stay?
When we come back, Mike and I shift gears and we start to talk about the locals in the NBA. We'll be back with more Spot on Sports in just 30 seconds.
Now back to Spot on Sports with your host, Mike Trezza.
And we're back. Before we dive into the NBA, Mike, I just want to come back and finish that story with the Mets because the details are still developing. Apparently, the Mets are not going to hire another GM until the end of the season. So my assumption would be Sandy is going to be the de facto GM for any deals they need to engineer between now and the beginning of the season, and also really for the rest of the season. Interesting
move because I thought they might just promote from within or have someone within the team just take over for a little bit and see where they went. But you know what? Makes sense. Let Sandy kind of steer the ship here, keep it going. And maybe he was kind of overseeing things from the beginning. And not that he was the GM, but maybe he had a little stronger role than everybody felt. And he feels comfortable doing it. I mean, he's been in that chair before.
All right, so let's jump into the NBA, especially with the locals. Let's start with the Knicks. Again, I thought the move to bring in Thibodeau as the coach was a really, really good move. I thought it was the best move, honestly, that the Knicks have made in a while. Very, very young group. And the thing that would concern me a little bit, Mike, as a Knicks fan, is Thibodeau, listen, over the course of time, he can be the kind of guy that's tough on young players. Is he going to wear down this young group?
Great question, Trez. I don't think he's going to wear this group down only because you're seeing good results. We want to pump the brakes here a little bit because they got off to, a good start for them. Lost a couple of games, but now we're back in the win column again, 2 in a row. I think the young guys are so hungry just to succeed. It's later on down the road if we bring in some veterans next season going through because you can only preach defense in the NBA so much.
Exactly.
And not that I'm really worried. I'm a big Tom Thibodeau fan. Have been for years. He gets the results. Will he eventually be the one to lead the Knicks? Hopefully, where we want to go as Knicks fans. Do we obviously to a championship, or is he someone? Okay, he's going to get you that far. He's going to wear out his welcome and go. I like what I see so far. He preaches defense and energy. You're seeing that out of anybody. You want to bring up Julius Randle? I mean, the guy, he's reborn.
Yeah.
It's silly to say that about a guy. Was he 27, 28?
26.
Right?
26. At 26, he's the old man of this group.
Just look at his fitness level, and he's a leader out there. 22 points a game, 11 rebounds. Obviously an all-star. I'm buying into what's being said, and I don't think he wants to go any place right now. Unless it's later on in the season, maybe he wants to go to a contender, but he's the man.
Yeah. And I mean, what I like about Randle when you watch him play, and what I like about Randle when you look at the Knicks, is the fact that he came into the league as a 19-year-old. Not that unusual now with the one-and-done phenomenon.
Sure.
But the thing is with him, Mike, is that his scoring average has gone up every single season. Last year, his scoring average was his first year on the Knicks. Scoring average dipped just below the 20 it had been the year before. But as you mentioned, now he's up over 22 points a game, over 10 rebounds a game. Under Thibodeau, can he become a star in this league?
I have no doubt. I kind of had a little bit of trepidation with it before, but seeing him now, this is a guy who's bought into this system. It does nothing but showcase him right now offensively because he really is. He's your number one weapon. But the defense and the rebounding shows he's a full player. There was a little bit of knock on him, was the motor there. A lot of Kentucky guys, right? You hear that a lot with Kentucky players.
Exactly.
The motor there. But I see nothing but a motor out of this guy right now, and very, very impressed with him.
How about some of the guys, some of the role players, the R.J. Barretts, the Kevin Knoxes, I don't know what a contribution they're going to get early on from Obi Topping. What about guys like that, Mike?
A lot of excitement about Obi at the beginning. Unfortunately, got hurt. You didn't see him for a while. Were they being overly cautious with him? Probably. But a couple of weeks, calf strain, then all that buzz kind of dies down. But again, does he have the motor? Absolutely. R.J. Barrett, he's kind of an enigma to me. And I'm rooting so hard for him. I mean, I have my Duke gear on today. I'm a big Krzyzewski guy. We'll get on that another time. But I'm really rooting hard for him. There are times where he looks like he's kind of sleepwalking out there. I think it's just a matter of finding what he does best. He's up to 17 points now. He's right around that. As we speak, he's been consistently in that range. He's not a shooter.
His shooting's got to get much better.
Yeah,
much better. I mean, I can't.
Just on the perimeter. It's ugly.
I can't say the number of 8 and 10 feet shots I've seen him miss this season. It's hard to watch sometimes, honestly.
When he's going to the rim, drawing contact, I don't think it's his favorite thing to do. But when he's doing that, he shoots the ball very well from the free throw line. Doesn't have to then have it in his head. He's got to shoot jumpers. Listen, are the Knicks going to be a great shooting team? You look at it. I found this stat, and again, we don't want to go too crazy with stats, but the Knicks are 30th out of 30 teams in 3-point shooting.
Wow.
Okay, something to think about going forward.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Utah leads the league. 16 makes a game. Knicks are at 9.5, somewhere in that range. You know how many they made the other day when they beat the Magic? 5.
Wow.
5 threes. Still won the game, defense. But you know what? Your shooting woes against the better teams. Am I asking a lot? I'm asking a lot.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to get too crazy because we'll bring the shooting in the future. But just watching them right now. You mentioned Kevin Knox. The poor guy is lost.
Yeah. Knick fans were excited when they drafted this kid, but it doesn't seem like he really has a role on this team right now.
That's the problem. They want him to be the shooter. And his shooting, at times, he looks fantastic. And Thibodeau was talking about him the other day. He's developing a stroke. He's getting comfortable. But then he's going to go 0 for 5, 1 for 6. Then he can make 4 out of 5. But, yeah, I don't know. I don't see the defense on the rebounding for him where it legitimizes putting him on the floor.
Consistency not there at all.
No, not at the moment.
But to me, Mike, the much more interesting story locally in the NBA has obviously been the Brooklyn Nets. Now, listen, we had to expect coming into this season that there was going to be some drama from Kyrie. I mean, the guy is given to that sort of drama. What did we find out over the last couple days about what's been going on with Kyrie? Where is he? Why is he not playing? What can you tell us about that?
Saw a little bit of his meeting with the media today. He's such an interesting guy because his visual, when you look at him, he's got his head down on his arms. He's scratching his head. He looks very unhappy. But when he speaks, and when he speaks to what was going on, it makes you feel a little bit better because if you're a basketball fan, you want him on the court. You want him to be your guy. You want him on the court. You don't want anything else. He is an activist. He's very deep into the Black Lives Matter, and understandably so. I think he's deeper than anybody realizes with that. What he said, he's ready to play. He loves the game. People don't truly understand him. We've heard that in a lot of ways from other athletes in the past. Misunderstood, whatever else. I wasn't buying it at the beginning, and maybe it's a lot better right now having him, with James Harden on his team, and maybe that's exciting him even more. I heard a crazy rumor. He was sitting out because he wasn't going to come back until Harden got traded. Who knows?
Yeah.
All I can tell you is, what did I learn? He's very deep into activism, and from what he says, he's ready to go.
All right. Well, listen, for those that were concerned that I know it's going to be a different equation when you add Kyrie Irving in there, that Durant and Harden weren't going to be able to coexist. Here's the box score from their first game together. Durant, 42 points. Harden, 32 points. So again, going to get a little more complicated when you get the three of them in there. But with the two of them, people anticipating that being an issue right from the get-go, guess what? You were wrong.
Right, and even you can talk points for both those guys that they played tremendous offense and they were comfortable on the court working together. Watched them play last night. The passing, knowing where they are. I mean, how many years ago was it that they played in Oklahoma City? Long time ago. Looks like they never missed a beat. I mean, to be that kind of talented in basketball, smart, I think that's what we forget sometimes about a guy like James Harden. Yeah, he scores. It's a lot of dribbles. He lulls you to sleep. But his basketball knowledge is really showing now because he has to take a step back to win.
How about the theory that some people are putting out there, Mike, that the reason they got Harden was because they were worried about being able to count on Kyrie day in and day out?
Not a crazy theory. I mean, because Kyrie, he does. Just when you think he's back, he flakes out. Listen. Does he miss a lot of games? He missed a lot of games last year, but the Nets weren't going anywhere.
Exactly.
But when you're talking about now, he needs to be what? Not the second banana, but the third in this group. Think back to when he played with LeBron. Won a championship. Was he happy with that, being a second fiddle to LeBron?
No, sir.
He's only, 28 years old, 29, somewhere in that range. When I was 28, I don't even want to talk about what I was thinking about. But, he should be a little bit more mature basketball player. Is he really about winning right now? If he is, I think this could be an all-time great situation. If not, can you get rid of him? That's the thing. Who would take him?
I know it's hard to say right now, Mike, because we haven't seen the three of them on the court together yet. But how would you compare the Nets right now to some of the top teams in the East? The Heat, the Celtics, the Pacers are a team everybody forgets about. And, of course, you've got Milwaukee.
Watching the game last night with Milwaukee, without Kyrie there, and, again, they were so smooth together. What the Nets are going to do so well is when you need a bucket, you're going to get it. You're going to have at least two premier scorers on the floor at all times. Let's say you have even foul trouble and there's one of them out there. You're going to have a Joe Harris who's knocking down threes. The rest of the team, depth, everybody was crying about depth. You have to make this trade for a guy like Harden, mortgage the future. What is the future in the NBA? Look right now at Toronto, right? They got their chip.
Exactly.
They're in the dumper. But you know what? They got their chip.
They got their championship.
Here with Brooklyn, if they go to the finals, win one, it's an over-the-top success no matter what happens 4 or 5 years from now. These three guys are young. Do they get tired of each other? Who knows? Does someone get hurt? God forbid not. But to me, in the East right now, they're far and above. They're my number one. Because
wow.
Defense, can they defend? Doesn't matter. Listen, I'm a basketball coach. I preach defense. Love to watch it. Talk about the yin and yang, right? The Nets and the Knicks. One team all about defense. It really doesn't matter.
Right.
Because they're just going to outscore people.
When you got that kind of firepower, I mean, let's just run it up and down the court all day. So I think the challenge for the coaching staff, Mike, you have Steve Nash, first-year guy. He's got a lot of experience to his left and some to his right. D'Antoni, Jacques Vaughn, right? He's got so listen, I mean, the challenge to him is going to be finding minutes for all of these guys, finding shots for all of these guys, and then you come into the equation of balancing the different egos and personalities involved. And how do you do that?
That's what I see for Steve Nash as his main focus right now. The X's and O's and everything else, he'll now listen, the guy was an all-time great player. He was a player development person with Golden State. He knows the game. But he's not running the timeouts right now if you're watching. He's deferring, and rightfully so. It's kind
learning on the job.
Yeah, well, like if you remember Jason Kidd when he first started coaching.
Exactly.
He didn't run anything. Chris Mullen, you watched him coach St. John's. Guy never ran a timeout. I mean, you know what I'm saying? So, yeah, what is Nash? He is going to be the ego guy. He's not that far removed. He's got the respect of the superstars. he'll let the other guys. So for this year, he's gonna put the right pegs in the right holes. The minutes, what do? You know what you say? Kyrie, how many minutes would you like to play tonight? KD, how about you? You feeling good? All right, you want to take a night off? It's the new NBA. I don't like it. I'm old school, but you got to do it.
Right. And the other challenge Nash has and his coaching staff is, you brought up the role players before. The guys who have been here, the DeAndre Jordans, the Joe Harrises, even Luau Cabarro, right, who's done a nice job. How do you get these guys to understand that there is a role for them on this team and that they still have to buy into the bigger picture, buy into the program?
That's a tough job because these young guys, they got to be a little awestruck with who they're playing with. And also, if James Harden is my new teammate and I'm a young guy, I'm not all that convinced he's all that worried about me. Because when he went to Houston and he had enough, he was apparently excited to play with John Wall. Didn't want anything to do with playing in Houston. So, it ran. Not that he wore out his welcome. I mean, he was there for quite a while, but he made it crystal clear that it was time for him to go, and he wasn't going to worry about anybody else's game whatsoever. Interesting point that got brought up the other night, that there's going to be this big rush of all these veterans to take a buyout and join the Nets at the end of the year. So you might see, again, I don't want to pull names out of the air, but do these young guys even have any kind of role projected out, or is it going to be guys, coming at the end of their career, say, we're going to plug them in here, bring them in. Again, you had a DeMarcus Cousins who was never healthy, but that type of guy who got bought out, joined Golden State. You're going to have an embarrassment of riches maybe of these older guys. I don't know. That to me is the toughest thing. What are you going to do with these young guys?
Yeah. All right, we're going to step away. When we come back, we're going to bring our Islanders beat reporter, John Santamaria, onto the show for the first time. We're going to talk some Islanders, some Rangers, some NHL when we're back in just 30 seconds.
Now back to Spot On Sports with your host, Mike Trezza.
Welcome back, Mike Trezza, Mike Guidone, and right now joining us on the phone for the very first time is our Islanders beat reporter, John Santamaria. John, welcome to the show.
Mike and Mike, good to be with you guys, talk some hockey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good luck to you guys. This is just to be a fun ride.
Yeah, the season's underway, John. You guys, the Islanders got started with a pair of games at the Garden, 4-0 Thursday night. You guys got some of the big guns involved right off the bat. A goal from Anders Lee, a goal from Barzal.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're talking just an unbelievable display there at the beginning, right, John? With no preseason. Hardly any. I mean, you had a couple of scrimmages there. Did you expect the Islanders to come out that comfortable with this new group?
Well, one of the things you want to remember is that this is not really a new group. This is just about the same team that left Edmonton in September during the playoff bubble. That's the first thing. The second thing is that, it didn't surprise me how quick they came out of the gate, because if you look at the line combinations that Barry Trotz put together, pretty much everything was exactly the same from what we last saw 4 months ago. The only difference was a couple of new wingers on that Pajot line, that third line, and that's going to be the line that's going to mix and match, because Derek Brassard now plays for the Arizona Coyotes, and then there was always some change at some point on that right side on his line. So that was the only difference, but other than that, this was pretty much the same forward line. The only change on defense, the two changes, Johnny Boychuk's retirement, as we all knew, he had to retire because of the eye injury, and then Devontae's was traded due to the flat cap. So, no, it didn't surprise me. And one thing that I have learned watching this game, and even watching a couple of short lockout seasons, when you have a team that is full of veterans and full of experience, those are the teams who wins this short season. Look at who won 7 years ago the Stanley Cup when it was in 2013. That was the Chicago Blackhawks, an established group. a veterans, an established core, same coach, same system, that's who you're going to, whoever it is, most likely will win the Stanley Cup. It's going to be from one of these established teams with that established core.
Let's talk about your goaltending situation for a moment, John. Varlamov is off to a great start. Shutout against the Rangers, then a shutout against Boston last night. 2 games, he's not given up a goal yet. However, we're trying to work in the young kid Sorokin, and he had a tough time in that second game against the Rangers.
Yeah, and of course, let's backtrack to that one. We all did not expect Ilya Sorokin to play on Saturday night. As Barry Trotz said, Varlamov was planning to start. He injured his jaw in warm-ups. It was an accidental injury. He said something like that cannot happen again. And believe me, the Islanders will make sure that does not happen again, especially in the middle of warm-ups. That was an unfortunate situation. It was clearly unfair for him to come in with maybe 20 minutes of notice. Hey, you're going to start. Here's your NHL debut. Have a nice night. Even with no fans in the world's most famous arena, never tough for anybody, and especially a 25-year-old rookie who has never played on NHL ice. Remember, the rink size is different in the NHL as opposed to Europe where he was playing. So a lot of adjustments he's going to make, but I think this is going to be a learning year and a growing year for Sorokin. This is not a year where you're going to expect, I don't want to have high expectations for him. I'd rather him come in and learn. I'm expecting Varlamov to carry the load this year because of the short season, his experience, and because this team has potential to make another deep playoff run.
Yeah, so, John, given the large amount of games they're going to be playing in a short period of time, right? You got a season that's less than 4 months, and you're going to squeeze 56 games in there. By necessity, isn't Barry Trotz going to have to work Sorokin in more often than he might be comfortable with?
Well, I think that's one. I think he will work some things in as far as getting in. But I think if he feels that he's not really performing where he needs to be, I think, and remember, they also have Corey Schneider as their third goalie. They signed him over the offseason. The former New Jersey Devils goaltender, Lou Lamoriello, had him there. So maybe they'll find a couple of starts for the veteran Schneider if they feel he is struggling. But again, I think that's going to be on a game-by-game basis. Of course, you're going to have some back-to-backs. There's not a whole lot of back-to-backs built into the schedule. And the beauty with the schedule, the way they did it, there are a lot of 2 games in a row in the same building. So there's not these back-to-back nights. They essentially built series like baseball. So like what you saw last week with the 2 games at the Garden, the Islanders have 2 games later this week, back-to-back, one at Nassau Coliseum, and then that's on Thursday, and then Sunday at the Prudential Center against the Devils. And that's not even really a lot of traveling. So the idea right now of going from, say, Philadelphia to Washington on a back-to-back, there might be a couple of those, but not too many this year, especially with the realignment of the league and the way they built the schedule, especially putting some series in place, unofficial series, like what you see in baseball.
John, you seem each year with the Islanders, I think the power play seems to be a hot button topic. I know we've only had 3 games, very small sample size, but it seems they're not off to a fiery start with their power play. Anything you see changes that possibly made, and again, I, as I mentioned before, we're only talking about 3 games, but scoring seems to be an issue that we talk about quite often with the Islanders and their power play. What do you see out of the power play so far, and maybe some changes they can make to kind of jumpstart it?
Well, you look at yesterday's game, and you're always going to get a tough opponent as far as a penalty kill when you look at the Boston Bruins, even without Zdeno Chara, who's now in Washington, and Torrey Krug, who's now in St. Louis. They're still as aggressive. They still have a deep core of forwards. It's just a matter of puck control. And one thing that I have said pretty much since the bubble, because they did struggle on the power play in the bubble and pre-pandemic shutdown, take more shots, play a little bit more aggressive. And I think that's something that, and control the puck. There is a lot of, the puck movement is certainly important because you want to keep possession away from the defense, but attack the goalie more. You want to keep the goalie busy because you could eventually force them out of position, and then you bank one in on their weak side.
Yeah, it's so frustrating. My father was the person that turned me on to hockey, and And he, as an old-time hockey fan, when the game was a little bit different, he used to just say, shoot the puck. You got to get it on net to make things happen. And that goes right to your point. You can't score and get anything going unless you're going to be a little bit more aggressive. And great point about Boston. They are a perennial penalty-killing team. And early in the season when you're trying to work that out, that's tough. You also mentioned
one other detail though to add with the power play. Part of me feels that it's also the system that Barry Trotz has in place. You don't want to make mistakes. He stresses all the time about not turning the puck over. So you wonder if he tells them, let's make a few extra passes to avoid that turnover and control the puck. But again, let's see if they make adjustments to that. But I still think making the turnover is more crucial not to happen than putting a couple of extra shots. That's what I see, too, from the system.
Yeah, and Barry Trotz is definitely not a coach you want to get in the doghouse with because he is he's pretty tough when it comes to his style of play and making sure that you're on board. You mentioned Johnny Boychuk before, a heart and soul guy, one of the best shooters in the game, a sniper. They used to call him Johnny Rocket. Forced to retire with that tough eye injury. Who's going to step up in his place, or at least try to fill those shoes for the team this year?
Well, let's go with two guys. So Andy Green, as you remember, when Adam Pelech was hurt last year, Andy Green was brought over from the Devils. I thought that was the most important thing that they were able to get done this offseason was re-signing Green. He's that vet. He'll replace the veteran side of Johnny Boychuk, the leadership, the mentoring to the young defenders. Andy Green was a phenomenal Devil, even in his prime, and still is playing top-notch hockey. Green's not a goal scorer. He's going to go out there and kill penalties, plays a similar game to Adam Pelech. But his presence in the locker room will help another guy, Noah Dobson, who's getting a top six role this year because Devon Hayes was shipped down due to the cap. So I think Green will help the young guys with leadership. Dobson and Noah Dobson could step in and certainly perform in some areas. But then there's a couple of other guys to keep an eye on who could really take a step up to this year with playing time if their number is called. One is Sebastian Aho. He's been in Bridgeport for the last couple of years. He's an Islander. He's a defensive prospect. And then also somebody who has been with this team. We have not seen much of him, and he's still under contract for this year, next year, and that's Thomas Hickey. So guys like that, it could be a combination of things. But again, I think in order to succeed in this short season, especially if, God forbid, knock on wood that nothing happens, if, God forbid, a player or two goes down because of quarantine or because of exposure, you have other guys in there ready to step up, and that's where the taxi squad will benefit a team like the Islanders. And this system is built on defense, so you're expected to come in and play top-notch defense.
Speaking of the taxi squad, one guy I wanted to ask you about, Oliver Wahlstrom, currently on the taxi squad, but a lot of hype for him and someone who is highly regarded. See any role for him this year?
I certainly think there could be, especially on that third line. Right now, Kiefer Bellows has been getting a few chances. We have not seen Leo Komarov yet, so I think it's going to be a matter of comfort. If they feel Wahlstrom could handle this, if they feel he fits, and I think one thing we're seeing with that Pajot line, he makes his line mates better. Whoever they put him with, look what a veteran like Derek Brassard did in the playoffs. And it's unfortunate he wasn't able to come back to the Islanders, but maybe Pajot, you put him with a couple of those young guys. Bellows has been okay so far. Maybe Wahlstrom will get his number called too, but when will it be? We're not sure yet. I'm learning right now with this short season, let's take it one game at a time. I think they're going to, knowing what Barry Trotz has done in the past, keep the line combinations as is until you feel a need to shake it up. And maybe when it comes to a shake-up, because it'll happen,
John, I want to go.
That's when Wahlstrom will get called.
John, I want to go full circle with you and bring you into where Mike and I started the discussion, which is the NFL. I know you're a big Jets guy. Just give me 30 seconds quick on your reaction to the hiring of Robert Saleh as the Jets head coach.
One thing that surprised me with it, I think it's a great hire. I was surprised how quickly they're moving. But then we saw some of these other teams moving, and I guess Joe Douglas felt let's get this done now. Let's get moving, because building the coaching staff is a lot of work, and you want to make sure you get the right guys. And you're already seeing part of why they feel they needed to do this. Locking up Mike LaFleur as the offensive coordinator, and I think that's even more of the bigger hire than Robert Saleh, because that is the system I love, watching the Packers play this weekend, and the Rams and the Titans, where that offensive system has spread, and I think this is one that could benefit Sam Darnold, and I would not be shocked if he's back with the Jets next year.
Yeah, Mike Guidone felt the same way. Let me get two quick predictions from you, John. AFC Championship game, Buffalo at Kansas City.
Patrick Mahomes is going to come back, and he's going to take the Chiefs right to Tampa and to the Super Bowl.
Okay, let's get your prediction, Mike Guidone. AFC Championship game, Buffalo at KC.
I hate to be boring, but I agree with John wholeheartedly. I think that Mahomes comes back. Josh Allen's had a great season, but I think the run ends here, and I like the Chiefs big in this game.
Johnny boy, Tampa Bay at Green Bay. Brady, the ageless wonder, against no spring chicken himself, Aaron Rodgers. Who do you like?
This one's a toss-up, but I think the Packers are going to get their revenge on Tampa for what happened in the regular season. But then it won't shock me if results go the other way, and history is made in this crazy 2020 season, and the Bucs become the first team to play the Super Bowl on their home field. So I think it's a toss-up, but I'll go this. If you want to say the safe pick, I'll go with Rodgers and the Packers. They're playing out of their minds,
Mike,
other than a couple of hiccups.
Mike, Tampa Bay at Green Bay.
Tight game, like the Packers. It would be very 2020, 2021 for the Bucs to play the Super Bowl on their home field, but don't see it happening in Lambeau. It's Rodgers' time. They are playing fantastic. It'll be close, really feel to be close, but see about a field goal. But I think the Packers are going to lead most of the way and take it home.
I'm going to go with both of you guys on the Packers. I'm going to depart from the two of you on the AFC team. I think Mahomes may not come back healthy if he plays. And I've thought all along this year that Buffalo was the team that could give them the best game. Don't forget, Buffalo's not going to be intimidated by bad weather, and they've got that team moving right now. So I'm going Buffalo, and I'm going Green Bay. John, you did a fantastic job. Thanks for a few minutes tonight.
Thank you very much, and we'll talk soon. Hopefully there'll be more good storylines to add on top of the hockey amongst the area.
Absolutely, John. We'll talk to you along the way. Thanks again.
John.
Thank you.
All right, Mike, you and I are just about out of time. Terrific job by you. Great first show.
Great to be here. You know, we talked about it for a while. Went so fast. We got to hit a lot of topics, but this is exciting because there's just going to be more and more sports coming our way.
Yeah, this was fun. Before we wrap, we've got to thank a few people. First of all, our engineer, producer, Archie Snowden, the amazing Archie. Fantastic job by him.
Thanks,
Our
Archie.
theme music, Mike, was written by my buddy Scott Daly. Great guy,
Fantastic.
Really talented guy. Our voiceover was done by Hannah Kussman. Nice job by Hannah. The artwork, the original prototype was done by my daughter, Tally Trezza. Valerie Hanatic was the artist who came up with the final rendition of our logo. And also thanks to Bernardino Rosario from here at Broadcast Center of New York in Westbury. He's done a fantastic job. This is a great facility. He's a great guy. He's made us feel really, really comfortable. He's welcomed us. By the way, folks, if you have any type of media production going on, this is the place to come. Broadcast Center of New York, right here in Westbury. Great facility, great people. You'll love it. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you next time. For Mike Guidone, Mike Trezza, saying we'll see you next time on Spot on Sports.